lie, bark, walk, jam, nitty gritty. You're listening to the boy from the big bad city, and it's jam hot.
I've done my fair share of praising the ultimate cartoon Chad. And even though Season 5 had pretty horrible pacing and a pretty dog shit finale, the first 4 seasons are Genndy Tartakovsky's most prestigious contribution to the animation medium and some of the best TV of the early 2000s. As much as I've criticized his writing choices in Season 5, Genndy 9 times out of 10 delivers on excellent rising action, stellar suspense, and of course, incredibly creative fight choreography. He's the only guy that made me give a shit about Star Wars for a good few months with his fucking masterful Clone Wars animated shorts. Go watch these, please. I guarantee you they will hype you the fuck up. But, as good as that is, I obviously have quite the clear bias. This was the most influential cartoon of my youth, and still one of my favorite shows despite its faults. And today, we're counting down my top 5 personal favorite episodes of Samurai Jack. Which was no easy feat, granted. It was like choosing between your own children. Oh, and I think it goes without saying, but I'll be spoiling each episode. I mean, it's mainly fight scenes, and, well, Jack wins most of them, let's be honest, so, do your thing, I guess. This has always been the funniest episode to me. It was actually a toss-up between this and Jack vs. Aku for the number 5 spot. And as hilarious as that episode is, Aku's fairy tales never fails to put me in hysterics. One day, Aku notices a bunch of children role-playing as Jack and himself fighting, all the while making fun of Aku and mocking his image. This, of course, enrages the demon god, so he gathers all the children to his lair to tell them the true story of Samurai Jack. What follows is an anthology of parodies of classic fairy tales, and while that setup could be funny enough on its own, the whole episode is narrated by an overacting Mako. What else could you ask for?
Once upon a time, there was a little girl with an adorable red cape and great flaming eyebrows.
Mako is clearly having a blast. This is his episode, and he is relishing in every second of it.
And so Little Red Hood was victorious!
Aku hilariously misrepresents Jack as a foolish delinquent and raises himself up as a righteous symbol of perfection throughout the episode. But the children keep interrupting Aku and calling him out on his story contradictions and leaps in logic. Soon enough, the children's constant criticism gets the better of Aku's ego, and he hastily finishes the story session and literally just storms out of the room.
Here's the truest tale of all. There was an almighty, all-powerful wizard, and there was a pathetic little samurai, and the wizard destroyed him! The end!
This episode doesn't have any crazy action set pieces, it doesn't have any real striking imagery, it doesn't even really have Jack in it until the last minute. But what it does have are a metric assload of jokes, and the brilliant Mako delivering those jokes. And quite frankly, that's enough for me. While it's not a very eventful episode, I've always enjoyed a gauntlet run of good comedy. It's the same reason I also enjoy Jackass. When your premise is nothing but to be a non-stop joke machine, it can produce very entertaining and addicting content. It can. You have to yet be funny. And I'm in no way saying that this is Aku's best episode. There are plenty of episodes where Aku is an ice-cold bastard. I would have to say my favorite episode of hardcore villain Aku would be Jack and the Warrior Woman, where Aku shapeshifts into a lady to get Jack to lead him to the time portal crystal, only for Aku to destroy it and mock Jack after the fact. Like, that really fucked with me as a kid. I couldn't stop thinking about how grim that was for a whole week. It legit broke my 7-year-old mind. What a penis. Anyway, Aku is an awesome character, brilliantly portrayed by an awesome late actor, and this episode makes me laugh the hardest. Moving on.
Oh yeah! Porridge!
For all its missteps and fuck-ups and unforgivable writing choices, Gendy, I cannot deny that the first 3 episodes of Season 5 were absolute perfection. They are as visceral as they are visually striking, and Episode 3 is my personal favorite of the 5th season. This is classic Samurai Jack conflict, with a grizzled, mature update in its themes and subject matter. Jack is wounded from his battle in the tomb with the daughters of Aku, and trudges through the forests at night, severely bloodied and on death's door. He stumbles into a cave where he attempts to draw the knife out of his ribs. Yeah, look at that. Good shit. He passes out shortly after, and as he experiences pains in the dead of night, he's haunted by his toxic consciousness, lamenting how they committed their first murder of a human being, and how he secretly hopes the daughters of Aku will kill him to finally be freed from this torture. This window into Jack's traumatized psyche was a fantastic addition to the season. It adds such a vulnerable and tragic dimension to the character that we've never really seen before, at least not to this extent, and the artistry accompanying it is just astounding. The blood animation makes me moister than Charlie himself. It's so goddamn cool. This whole arc of Jack's in the 5th season is what made us have so much hope for it, because it was so apparent that Gendy was taking this seriously. Soon, a white wolf, also injured from a battle of his own from last episode, wanders into the same cave. They both find refuge here as they slowly but surely get more acquainted with one another, having meals together, helping Jack heal his wounds, and offering Jack warmth in the night. It's rather touching, and in classic Samurai Jack fashion, it's all done with no dialogue. Jack then has a flashback to his childhood. He and his parents are being escorted via carriage when they're intercepted by a gang of goons. His father, being the stone-cold badass he is, gives them the choice to leave with their lives or stay and face their destiny. And of course, when they refuse his offer, he slaughters the bitches with no effort, effectively traumatizing the young Jack. After this grisly sight, Jack's father gives him some sage words of wisdom. The decisions you make and the actions that follow are a reflection of who you are. You cannot hide from yourself. When we cut back to the present, Jack is fully healed and so is the wolf, yay! They go their separate ways as Jack is ready for his next battle with the daughters of Aku. We cut back to the daughters and they come across the corpse of their dead sister. They see their sibling's murder as a pathetic failure on her part.
Death is failure.
Well, we're talking a big game now, aren't we? And they follow the blood trail the samurai left behind into the forest. And the rest of the episode is a masterclass in action storytelling. Some of the best the show has ever displayed. Gendy is in his element. The slow burn intro through the snowy forest, complemented by near silence, creates legitimate nerve-wracking tension. And it's only made better when Jack starts talking to them through the trees trees, repeating his father's dialogue verbatim to them, letting them know that he has full intent on killing all of them. The daughters, of course, react to his fortune cookie nonsense with anger and vitriol, and after some hefty suspense, Jack initiates battle. Oh, sorry, death is failure. The fight scene that follows is one of my favorites, honestly. It's exceptionally hard-hitting, intense, creative, violent, goated as hell, has amazing rising action, and god damn it, Bearded Jack is just so fucking hot. Not to mention, Tyler Bates' score is the best thing to ever happen to this show. I'd love to show you clips, but this episode has huge Adult Swim copyright bait on it, so... The battle soon reaches its final stage when what remains of the daughters corner Jack at the edge of a cliff. But do you think Samurai Jack gives a fuck? Hell no, he decimates these psychotic bitches one by one, man. This guy has had over 50 years of combat experience. He's chucking them off the ledge like it's nothing. Fucking nothing. Jesus Christ, I love this show. And Ashi cursing his name as Jack nonchalantly lets go of the chain makes me die of laughter without fail. Like, look at him. Look at that unchanging expression. It's priceless. This episode masterfully balances out its dark, emotional themes and symbolism in the first half with immeasurable amounts of hype in its second. And not to mention, the show has never looked better visually. The striking, bold colors and minimalist art design in this episode is by far some of my favorite aesthetics from these artists. It's the traditional fall and rise portion of a hero's journey given a very grim update, and perfectly contained into 27 minutes of beautiful, tightly written art. It may be from a bad season, but despite that, this episode is still one of my favorites. It is simply iconic. Anyone who's seen the show knows exactly why this episode is on here. But before I get into the amazing third act, I really do want to give attention to the rest of it, because there is some good shit on display here. The episode starts off with Jack making his way into a magical river. He discovers that this river forces you to the bottom and tries to kill you. After he manages to escape, he notices a tribe of Cyclop Jawas heading into the water. They summon a water camel spider alien that brings them across the river. Jack inquires with the water camel spider alien if he knows a way to a passage in time. The alien then brings Jack all the way into a rocky valley, where we get to see the layout team rock their magic. Yep. No, but seriously, this episode has some of my favorite layouts throughout the whole show. And you know I'm a sucker for panoramas. The alien then meets with a giant scorpion monster. They converse in their demonic language that this traveler may be the legendary samurai warrior. As Jack continues his journey with the scorpion, he gets hurled into a windy patch of the mountain infested with howling banshees. Jack battles his way through the blinding environment and begrudgingly asks if he passed the monster's test. He is then granted permission to fly atop a massive pterodon, who finally brings Jack to the desolation of the Guardian. This is where the episode really begins. As Jack makes his way through this mechanical boneyard, he sees a glowing light in the distance. He's finally made it, the time portal of all time portals. As Jack approaches this shining monolith, the blockaded silhouette of the Guardian becomes clearer. Jack humbly requests passage through the portal, but the Guardian laughs at him and says that only the Chosen One can use this portal, and Jack is not the Chosen One. Jack is very understandably frustrated by this. He's tired of having to battle for his goal, and he's no longer taking no for an answer. This is his chance to finally bring his quest to an end, and so he initiates a duel. The stage is set. We feel the looming threat the Guardian poses. This is someone you know could easily kill Jack, especially given that he's the one that caused all this death that surrounds him. This is no ordinary opponent for Jack. This is the opponent that will determine the fate of his quest. This is without a doubt one of the most entertaining action set pieces in the show. The Guardian is barely even fighting Jack. He's schooling him at every opportunity, constantly telling him he's not going to win. And he's absolutely right. No matter what Jack throws at this living barricade, the Guardian brings back 10 times harder. The intensity of the fight slowly builds, with the Guardian shifting the tone with an array of weapons, maneuvers, and defenses. But Jack, cleverly using a trick he adopted from the Spartans in Season 2, love that little detail, deflects the Guardian's missiles and nukes the fucker. This is where the fight really reaches its height. Jack is now completely on the defense as the Guardian throws the hardest punches. Jack comments on how the Guardian is the strongest and most skilled opponent he's ever faced, and the Guardian actually gives Jack one last chance to forfeit the fight before he gets killed. But Jack, in a blind rage of desperation, charges the Guardian only to be thrown around like a fucking ragdoll. Jack has been officially defeated, and as the Guardian prepares the finishing blow, the time portal signifies that he's forbidden to kill him. As Jack is flown away by the Pterodon, the Guardian says that Jack can't use it yet. And then Gendy said, yeah, fuck that, I'll do this stupid shit instead. But man, oh man, when I was a kid seeing this for the first time, I was hypnotized. This whole episode was like a fever dream that developed to an incredible peak. It's bursting with a diverse color palette as we journey through this mysterious land, and as we get closer to the Guardian, the color is slowly muted until we reach his dark domain. This fight scene has been forever engraved into my cerebellum. It has some of the best pacing, the best use of weapons, fantastic dialogue, dramatic as well as humorous shifts in tone, and a haunting conclusion. Also, I love how throughout the show, Jack has always responded to the violence, never initiated it, and because of that, he's always won. But here, his anger and frustration got the better of him, and caused him to start the battle, and ultimately lose. This is just such a fantastic episode with fantastic music and a fantastic ending, even if it was tragically retconned. I gotta read the comics, man. This is depressing as hell, and I love it. The tale of X49, or X9, I'm calling him X49, that's what the wiki says, has earned a reputation among the fanbase as one of the best episodes of the entire series, and I have to agree. This side story, in which Jack only appears for a few seconds on screen, is one of the most emotional, atmospheric, and tragic of any episode. The episode opens up with an almost monochrome film noir color palette as the rain pours down. We see our secondary protagonist brooding in his car. He begins to tell his story of how he, a gangster robot, ended up so emotionally conflicted about the task he's about to carry out. Long ago, when Aku first gained domination over the world, he rounded up a group of scientists to create a robot army to destroy any potential enemies, especially the samurai who he sent 25 years in the future. Over time, the robots were perfected into the X series, the most ruthless, cold, and murderous robots in Aku's armada, except for X49. He was given an experimental emotion chip, simply because the scientist is just a dick and wanted to see what would happen. So, as you can imagine, X49 doesn't really enjoy gunning down innocent people day after day, but because of his emotions, functions, he's able to escape near-death situations. Also, can I just say, this is a kid's show? But one day, amidst the gunfire and his squad getting absolutely murked, he discovers a small dog, which he immediately takes in and falls in love with. He names her Lulu. And with the new Beetle drones now being launched into the battlefield, X-49 retires from the gangster life and lives peacefully with Lulu. But one day, Lulu disappears, only for X-49 to find out that Aku sent one of his minions to capture her. After Jack destroyed all of the Beetle drones, the scientist who gave X-49 the emotion chip tells Aku about the variant robot, which gives Aku the idea to blackmail him to kill Jack in exchange for Lulu. Which brings us back to the beginning, and knowing what we know now, the rest of the episode is just pure suspense. The lone robot sneaks through the cold, pipe-ridden warehouse, frantically pointing his guns in multiple directions every few seconds. Not to mention, it's not often we get to see Jack as the main threat. X-49 knows how dangerous the samurai is after seeing the rampant destruction left behind. And going into this fight, he is well aware the odds are definitely against him. And despite how many bullets he throws at Jack, God damn it all, that is so tragic, so depressing, but so unbelievably badass at the same time. We obviously don't want X-49 to die, we want him to live happily with Lulu. But to Jack, he's just another pile of nuts and bolts. And Jack is obviously not going to fail his quest and die at the hands of some random robot gangster. It's such a bittersweet gut punch, one I cannot get enough of. Also, the shot of Jack showing a guilty expression as X-49 says his last words is a great way of showing how his decades of journeying are starting to take a toll on him. He realizes he killed someone who had a loved one, but he must keep moving forward until he finishes his quest. And while it's never confirmed, I think it's obvious that Aku killed Lulu, or at least one of his minions did. I mean, it makes sense, yeah, once they found out X-49 failed, they would have no use for the dog anymore, so like, Jesus. It's episodes like this that really show the talent Genndy has for storytelling and animation, accomplishing so many conflicting emotions and ideals in such a short span of time. The tale of X-49 may be a short and sad story, but one that will be remembered and adored by fans forever. It's runner-up time, bitches! Let's do this! Jack and the Scotsman. Everybody loves the Scotsman. I don't know a single fan of the show who doesn't. After all their bickering and arguing throughout the episode, they end up having a rather charming and humorous camaraderie that has since become one of the best parts of the show. Before Bender and Jake the dog, John DiMaggio roasted the ever-living fuck out of Jack. And it's glorious. Jack and the Haunted House. This is definitely the most visually striking episode, as well as the most disturbing. The visuals here are downright traumatizing for any child, and the stylistic finale between Jack and the demon possessing the house is one of the most fascinating set pieces in the show. Also, it's in complete silence, which is seriously unsettling as hell. So yeah, this one's good. Jack remembers the past. I'm probably gonna get a lot of shit for this not being number one, but this is easily the most tear-jerking and emotional episode of the entire series, and I would be remiss if I didn't give it a shout-out. It's this episode that really cemented Samurai Jack as one of the best primetime shows of its time, and separated it from every other cartoon out there. The way it delivered such a thoughtful, mature, and sentimental character study of Jack as he walks through the old ruins of his home, remembering his youth, is peak peak children's show writing, man. Holy fuck. But as amazing as it is, there's one more that always tugs at my heartstrings. Jack and the Lava Monster is my all-time favorite episode of the show. And I'm sorry if that's underwhelming, but I love everything about this simple and sentimental story. Every time I come back to it, it entrances me just like it did on my first viewing. And as a matter of fact, this was the first episode I actually ever saw of the show. This was the one that hooked me in, and then I made damn sure I watched every episode in order after that. It all starts with Jack wandering through a chilly valley when he hears a distant call coming from a volcano. The voice beckons Jack to come to him, as Jack then makes his way up the volcano and through a lethal labyrinth of booby traps, falling floors, and ceilings, all the while seeing the remains of the poor souls that came before him. Soon enough, he makes his way to the center of the volcano, where he is greeted by the titular lava monster, who immediately initiates battle with him. When Jack inquires why, the monster simply states it's his purpose to fight. As Jack fights this titan, he demands an answer as to why so many lives were lost by his wrath. The monster denies him an answer as he throws strike after strike. It isn't until Jack finally lands a blow on the monster that he happily states he's finally met a worthy opponent after all these years. An incredibly badass line with and without context. Jack is very confused by this, and as such, he refuses to keep fighting for the monster's enjoyment. The monster tries to poke at him and get him to fight back, but Jack just flat out says to strike him down, because he is not battling. The monster then pleads to Jack to finish the fight. He cannot strike him down without honor, for he must earn a warrior's death to earn his place in Valhalla among his fallen comrades. Jack is suddenly intrigued by his dilemma, and the monster continues by telling Jack the story of how he came to be this fiery golem. What follows is my all-time favorite tale from this whole series. Long ago, the lava monster was a mere Viking with a loving family, and they lived in a very prosperous village. But one day, an eclipse blocked the sun from the entire world, and from that darkness, the dreaded Shogun of Sorrow was born. Aku ravaged his village, setting everything ablaze, and despite the army's attacks, nothing could stop the indestructible wrath of the Demon Lord. The Viking man then faced off against Aku himself, and actually managed to land a few vital blows to him, which usually only Jack can do that. But then the sadistic bastard imprisoned the Viking in a crystal tomb and forced him to watch as he burned what was left of his village to ashes, killing everyone he loved. Jesus Christ, Aku, what the fuck is your deal? Like, I know your name is literally evil, but that's just... this is bleak as hell. This is a kid's show! Then, as if that weren't enough, he cursed his soul to be trapped at the bottom of a mountain for eternity, denying him a warrior's end. But the Viking's will was strong, so strong that he actually constructed his own vessel out of rock and magma, and then he created a labyrinth that only the greatest warrior could traverse, so that he and the warrior may have a fair duel to the death. Dying an honorable death in battle would break Aku's curse and free his soul to Valhalla, so the lava monster once again implores Jack to unsheath his sword and finish the fight, and Jack humbly obliges. Now, while this fight is nowhere near as awesome as the Guardian fight, or hell, even really the majority of fights in the series, aesthetically speaking, from a storytelling point of view, it bears so much emotional weight. These are two battle-hardened warriors that now have a great mutual respect for each other. Jack now knows that this monster is yet another victim of Aku's cruelty, something he, of course, heavily identifies with, and so so he willingly battles this Goliath with full intent on killing and freeing him from this hell, which he actually does. The lava monster reverts to his human form and rapidly ages as his years of life catch up with him. He calls Jack his friend and says not to worry, for he is at peace. Jack watches as the angels of Valhalla carry him to the heavens above. But before he leaves, he engraves one parting word on the monster's stone. And how perfect is that? That's what drives this whole thing home. My God, what a powerful ending. He walks off into the valley, continuing his quest, as the Viking and his comrades look down on the warrior that reunited them after 25 years. And yeah, that's my favorite episode. It was the first one I ever watched. It's what got me into the show. I love the story of the lava monster. I love how it ties into the beginning of the season when Aku was reborn. And I love the parallels between the lava monster and Jack as two warriors that were agelessly cursed by Aku 25 years ago in the story. It's just awesome from beginning to end. It perfectly encapsulates everything bold and brilliant about this show, and I would recommend it to anyone, especially if you haven't seen the series. And you know, I'm not really the best at writing a good segue to the outro of the video, so this is usually the part where I cut myself off mid-sentence with some TV static, and then there's an animated segment of me, and yeah, that's kinda how I do things around here. Welcome to the channel. Support me on OnlyFans and Grindr. Get yourself some merch from the merch store at merchstore.com, bitches. Enter code MERCHSTORE to get 50% off the merch at the merch store and buy yourself a shirt. Oh, and I don't have it. And just for good measure, here are some other honorable mentions. And if none of your favorites were in there, well, I don't know. Here's a bunny. It has a backpack.